Every day at recess, 10-year-old Jamal Matthews runs lonely laps around his school playground, pretending to be Formula One champion Lewis Hamilton. The other kids call him Weird Wheels and laugh at his racing dreams. When a bully's cruel prank leaves Jamal in tears, he decides to write a letter to his hero Lewis Hamilton about the bullying he faces. What Jamal doesn't expect is that his letter will not only reach the 7-time world champion, but receive a response that will change his life forever. As Lewis shares his own painful experiences with childhood bullying, a surprising connection between their stories emerges, one that reveals they share more than just a passion for racing. Jamal Matthews took a deep breath as he lined up at his imaginary starting grid. The playground asphalt wasn't a real racetrack, but in his mind, it was Silverstone, the famous circuit just 15 minutes from his house. He could almost hear the roar of engines and smell the burning rubber. "Lights out, and away we go," Jamal whispered, using the same words the race announcer always said. He sprinted forward, his skinny legs pumping hard as he took the first corner. In his head, he wasn't Jamal Matthews, the quiet 10-year-old from Silverstone Primary School. He was Lewis Hamilton, the greatest Formula One driver of all time, racing toward another world championship. "And Hamilton takes the lead," Jamal narrated to himself, his arms out like wings as he leaned into the second turn by the swing sets. From across the playground, Tyler Johnson watched with his friends. Tyler was the most popular boy in 5th grade, with cool sneakers and a dad who bought him whatever he wanted. He nudged his friend Mark and pointed. "Look at Weird Wheels," Tyler snickered. "He's doing it again." Jamal didn't notice them watching. He was focused on making perfect racing lines around the playground, just like Lewis would. He knew all about racing lines from watching every Formula One race on TV with his mom. His mom. She worked so hard since Dad moved to Scotland for his new job. They were supposed to join him soon, but that was 2 years ago. Now Dad only called on weekends, and Mom worked extra shifts at the grocery store. Hamilton pushes through cops. "Corner!" Jamal announced, turning sharply by the basketball hoop. He'd been to the real cops' corner once. Last year, before Dad's child support payments got smaller, Mom had saved enough to buy tickets to the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. They'd sat near Cop's Corner, and Jamal had watched in awe as, though, real Lewis Hamilton steered his Mercedes through the turn at nearly 180 miles per hour. That was the best day of his life. Today was shaping up to be one of the worst. As Jamal rounded the final playground corner, he didn't see Tyler's foot stick out. One moment he was crossing an imaginary finish line, and the next he was flying through the air. He landed with a splash in a muddy puddle left by morning rain. Laughter erupted from Tyler's group. "Crash and burn! Weird Wheels!" Tyler called out. Jamal felt the cold mud seeping through his school uniform. His left knee stung where he'd scraped it on the asphalt. But worse than the pain was the burning in his cheeks as everyone laughed. Ms. Parker, the playground monitor, rushed over. "Are you okay, Jamal? What happened?" Before Jamal could answer, Tyler spoke up. "He tripped, Ms. Parker. He was doing his weird racing thing again." Ms. Parker helped Jamal to his feet. "You need to be more careful, Jamal. Let's get you cleaned up." She didn't see the smirk on Tyler's face or how Mark gave him a high five behind her back. In the bathroom, Jamal tried to wash the mud from his uniform, but the brown stains wouldn't come out. He'd have to wear it for the rest of the day. Mom couldn't afford to buy new school clothes until next month. The final bell couldn't come soon enough. When it finally rang, Jamal hurried out before Tyler and his friends could find him. Usually, some kids from his street walked home together, but today, no one waited for him. It was a lonely walk home, the same route he took every day, past houses with neat gardens and the small shop where sometimes Mom let him buy candy on Fridays. Today wasn't Friday, and there would be no candy. When he reached their small apartment, Mom wasn't home yet. Her note on the fridge said she was working late again. Jamal made himself a sandwich and carried it to his room. His bedroom was small, but it was his favorite place in the world. Every wall was covered with Formula One posters. Most were of Lewis Hamilton in his Mercedes silver and black race car. Lewis smiled down at Jamal from every angle, lifting trophies, standing on podiums, celebrating with his team. Jamal sat on his bed and carefully pulled out his most treasured possession from under his pillow, the official program from the British Grand Prix. Dad had bought it for him before he left. Inside, Lewis Hamilton had been featured on 3 whole pages. "You showed them all," Jamal whispered to Lewis's picture. "You never gave up." He traced his finger over the words in the article where Lewis talked about being bullied as a kid. How people said he'd never make it. How he proved them all wrong. Jamal's muddy uniform was starting to dry, making his skin itch. Tomorrow would be another day of the same. More teasing, more lonely laps around the playground, more pretending he was somewhere else, someone else. But for now, in his room with Lewis Hamilton watching over him, Jamal could dream about racing real cars on real tracks. Someday, he wouldn't just be pretending anymore. Someday, they'd all see who he really was. He just had to keep racing, one lonely lap at a time. The next morning, Jamal almost pretended to be sick. He stared at his ceiling, counting the tiny glow-in-the-dark stars that Dad had stuck up there years ago. They didn't glow much anymore. "Jamal, breakfast is ready," Mom called from the kitchen. He dragged himself out of bed. Mom had ironed his uniform, somehow getting most of the mud stains out. She always worked magic like that. "You feeling okay, honey?" she asked, setting a bowl of cereal in front of him. "I'm fine," Jamal lied. He didn't want to worry her. She already had enough to worry about. "I got a call from Ms. Parker yesterday," Mom said, pouring herself coffee. "She mentioned you fell during recess." Jamal pushed his cereal around the bowl. "I tripped," Mom frowned. "Are those boys still bothering you?" "It's not a big deal," Jamal said, even though it was. "You should tell a teacher if someone's being mean." Jamal nodded, but they both knew telling wouldn't help. It would just make things worse. At school, Jamal slid into his seat just as the bell rang. He could feel Tyler staring at him from 2 rows over. "Today we're working on our computer projects," Ms. Parker announced. "You'll have 30 minutes to continue your presentations." The class filed into the computer lab. Jamal had been working on a racing game he'd created in Scratch, a program that let kids make simple computer games. His game showed a silver car racing around a track that looked like Silverstone. He'd spent weeks on it, but when he logged in, his project was gone. "Ms. Parker," he called, raising his hand. "My game disappeared." Ms. Parker came over, frowning at the screen. "That's strange. Did you save it properly last time?" "Yes, A snicker from behind made Jamal turn around. Tyler quickly looked away, but his smirk told Jamal everything. "I'll help you start over," Ms. Parker offered. But 30 minutes wasn't enough time to rebuild what had taken weeks to create. By the end of computer class, Jamal had barely finished drawing a new car. At lunch, Jamal sat alone at the end of a table. He opened his lunchbox to find the sandwich and apple Mom had packed. He took one bite of his sandwich when a shadow fell across the table. "That looks good," Tyler said, reaching out and grabbing Jamal's sandwich. "I'm still hungry." Mark and 2 other boys laughed as Tyler took a big bite. "Give it back," Jamal said quietly. "What was that?" Weird wheels? I couldn't hear you over the sound of your race car. Tyler made engine noises, causing more laughter. A lunch monitor looked their way, and Tyler quickly dropped the sandwich back onto Jamal's tray. "Just joking around," he said with a fake smile. Then he leaned in close to Jamal. "Better eat fast." Jamal wasn't hungry anymore, but he forced himself to eat the sandwich Tyler had touched. He couldn't waste food. Mom worked too hard for that. Art class was last period. Ms. Jenkins asked everyone to draw their heroes. Jamal carefully sketched Lewis Hamilton standing next to his race car, adding details to the Mercedes star and the number 44 on the car. "That's really good, Jamal," Ms. Jenkins said, stopping by his desk. For a moment, Jamal felt proud. But when Ms. Jenkins moved on, he heard Tyler whisper to Mark, "Watch this." A moment later, someone bumped Jamal's arm, sending his black marker streaking across his drawing. Before he could react, a hand reached out and grabbed the paper, ripping it down the middle. "Oops, sorry," Tyler said, not sounding sorry at all. "It was an accident." Ms. Jenkins turned around. "What happened?" "Jamal tore his drawing," Tyler said. "He got mad because it didn't look right." "I didn't," Jamal started. "Boys, that's enough," Ms. Jenkins said. "Jamal, you can start over tomorrow." After school, Jamal was putting his books in his backpack when he overheard Tyler talking loudly to a group of kids. "My dad rented out the whole go-kart track for my birthday on Saturday," he bragged. "Everyone's invited." He looked directly at Jamal. "Well, almost everyone. Why would we invite someone who just pretends to race? You'll never be a real racer like Hamilton." The words stung worse than any physical push or trip. Jamal zipped up his backpack and hurried out of the classroom. That night, he couldn't sleep. He stared at Lewis Hamilton's posters in the dark. "How did you do it?" he whispered. "How did you keep going when everyone was against you?" He reached for his tablet and searched for Lewis Hamilton bullying. A video appeared of Lewis at a press conference. "I was bullied at school," Lewis said in the video. "I was one of the only black kids. People told me I wouldn't make it. But you know what? When people put you down, use it as fuel." Jamal replayed those words. Use it as fuel. He sat up in bed as an idea took shape. It was scary, but exciting. If Lewis could speak up, maybe Jamal could too. He just needed to be brave enough to try. Jamal pulled his school notebook from his backpack and flipped to a clean page. The house was quiet. Mom was working the late shift at the grocery store, so he had time to think without interruptions. "Dear Mr. Hamilton," he wrote, then quickly erased it. Too formal. "Dear Lewis," he tried again. That felt better, like writing to a friend instead of a famous person. He chewed on his pencil, thinking about what to say. Should he start by telling Lewis about himself? Or should he jump right into talking about the bullying? After a few attempts, he finally began to write. "Dear Lewis, my name is Jamal Matthews. I'm 10 years old, and I live near Silverstone. You're my hero. I've watched every race you've won. I was even at the British Grand Prix last year with my mom. We sat near Cop's Corner, and I saw you zoom past. It was the best day of my life. I'm writing because some kids at school are mean to me. They call me Weird Wheels because I love racing so much. I run laps at recess and pretend I'm you in your Mercedes. A boy named Tyler trips me and takes my lunch. Yesterday, he deleted my racing game from the school computer and ripped my drawing of your car. I don't know what to do. My dad moved away for work, and Mom works really hard. I don't want to make things worse for her by complaining. Saw a video where you talked about being bullied when you were a kid. You said to use it as fuel. I'm trying, but it's hard when nobody else at school likes racing or believes I could be a real racer someday. How did you stay brave when people were mean to you? Did you ever feel like giving up? I know you're busy winning championships and making the world better. You probably won't read this, but writing to you makes me feel stronger already. Your biggest fan, Jamal Matthews. Jamal read over his letter twice. It wasn't perfect, but it said what he wanted to say. Now came the hard part, figuring out where to send it. He searched online for how to write to Lewis Hamilton and found the address for the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team headquarters in Brackley, England. Jamal wrote it carefully on an envelope, then placed his letter inside. When Mom came home late that night, he was still awake. "Jamal, why aren't you asleep?" she asked, peeking into his room. "Mom, can I mail a letter?" He held up the envelope. She came in and sat on his bed. "Who are you writing to, honey?" "Lewis Hamilton." A small smile appeared on her tired face. Of course you are." She took the envelope and looked at the address. "This is for the Mercedes team?" Jamal nodded. "I want to tell Lewis how much he inspires me." Mom's smile faded a little. "Stamps are a bit expensive right now. Can it wait until after payday next week?" Jamal tried not to show his disappointment. "Sure, Mom." She kissed his forehead. "I'm proud of you for writing to your hero. That takes courage." After she left, Jamal placed the letter on his nightstand. One more week. He could wait that long. The next day at school, Tyler seemed to be everywhere. He bumped into Jamal in the hallway, knocking his books to the floor. At lunch, he made loud engine noises whenever Jamal walked by. But for once, Jamal didn't feel as hurt by it all. He had written to Lewis Hamilton. Even if Lewis never read the letter, writing it had made Jamal feel like he had done something brave. That night, dark clouds gathered over their town. By bedtime, rain was pouring down, hitting the roof with sharp, heavy drops. Jamal fell asleep to the sound of thunder rumbling in the distance. He woke in the middle of the night to a dripping sound. At first, he thought it was just the rain outside, but then he felt something wet hit his arm. He switched on his lamp to see water dripping from a spot on the ceiling. "Mom!" he called, jumping out of bed. Mom rushed in, her eyes wide. "Oh no, not again. The landlord said he fixed that leak." They worked quickly, placing buckets and pots under the worst spots. But the rain was heavy, and soon water was coming in from multiple places. "Get your school books off the floor," Mom said, rushing to find more containers. Jamal gathered his things, stacking them on his desk. That's when he noticed his letter to Lewis was gone from his nightstand. "My letter!" he cried, looking around. Frantically, he found it on the floor, soaked through with rainwater. The ink had smeared, turning his careful words into blue blotches. The envelope was ruined, too. "What is it, honey?" Mom asked, coming back with another pot. Jamal held up the soggy paper. "My letter to Lewis. It's ruined." Mom put an arm around his shoulders. "I'm so sorry. You can write another one." But Jamal wasn't sure he could. It had taken all his courage to write those words the first time. Now it felt like even the sky was against him. They spent the rest of the night moving buckets as the rain continued to pour. By morning, Jamal's room was a mess of damp clothes and wet posters. His favorite Lewis Hamilton poster had fallen from the wall, the corners curling from the moisture. As he got ready for school, his eyes were heavy from lack of sleep, and his heart felt just as heavy. The letter he had worked so hard on was gone, turned to pulp by the rainwater. "Maybe it's a sign," he told himself, looking at his ruined poster. Maybe some dreams aren't meant to come true. But as he studied Lewis's face in the damaged poster, something inside him refused to give up completely. If Lewis could keep fighting when things were tough, maybe Jamal could too. He just needed another way to reach his hero. Morning announcements weren't usually interesting at Silverstone Primary. Most days, Jamal zoned out while the principal, Mrs. Green, talked about lunch menus and school rules. But today was different. "Students, I have an exciting opportunity to announce," Mrs. Green's voice crackled through the classroom speaker. "Thanks to a generous donation from Silverstone Circuit, we're holding a special contest. The winner will receive 2 tickets to the upcoming British Grand Prix." Jamal sat up straight, his heart pounding. Had he heard correctly? Tickets to the E2AT British Grand Prix? To enter, Mrs. Green continued, students must write an essay about my greatest hero and explain why this person inspires them. Essays should be at least 2 pages long and are due next Monday. The winner will be announced the following Friday. Ms. Parker smiled at the class. What a wonderful opportunity. I expect many of you will want to participate. Jamal's mind was racing faster than an F1 car. He knew exactly who his greatest hero was. This was his chance, not just to see Lewis Hamilton race again, but maybe, somehow, to reach him. During lunch, everyone was talking about the contest. Even Tyler seemed excited. "I'm going to write about Cristiano Ronaldo," Tyler told his friends. "My dad says he'll help me. He knows someone who works at Silverstone, so I'll probably win." Jamal sat alone, planning his essay in his head. He would write about Lewis Hamilton, not just as a racing champion, but as someone who overcame bullying and racism to become one of the greatest drivers in history. That night, Jamal told his mom about the contest. "That's wonderful, honey," she said. "You know more about Lewis Hamilton than anyone. You could definitely win." For the first time in weeks, Jamal felt hopeful. He gathered all his Lewis Hamilton books, magazines, and statistics. He would make this the best essay ever written. Over the next few days, Jamal worked harder than he had on any school assignment. He wrote about Lewis growing up in Stevenage, a town not much different from their own. He wrote about Lewis's dad, working multiple jobs to support his son's racing dreams. He included facts about Lewis's 103 race wins and 7 world championships, tied with Michael Schumacher's record. But most importantly, he wrote about how Lewis fought for causes he believed in, speaking out against racism, supporting diversity in racing, and using his platform to make the world better. Jamal also wrote honestly about his own life, about the bullies at school, about running laps alone at recess, about dreaming of being a real racer someday. He wrote about how watching Lewis win races made him feel like maybe he could be strong too. By Sunday night, his essay was 6 pages long, triple what Mrs. Green had asked for. Mom helped him edit it down to 4 pages, but no shorter. "I could steeten. Perfect, Jamal," she said, hugging him. Lewis would be proud. The next morning, Jamal handed in his essay with shaking hands. Ms. Parker smiled as she took it. "You seem to have put a lot of work into this, Jamal," she said. "Yes, Ms. Parker. Lewis Hamilton is my hero." As he returned to his seat, he noticed Tyler watching him with narrowed eyes. The week crawled by. Jamal could hardly concentrate on his lessons, thinking about the contest. What if he actually won? What if he got to see Lewis race again? Finally, Friday arrived. During last period, the principal's voice came over the speakers. "Students, I'm pleased to announce the winner of our My Greatest Hero essay contest." Jamal held his breath. The judges were deeply moved by one essay in particular. This student wrote with such knowledge and passion about their hero that it was impossible not to be inspired. The classroom was silent. The winner is Jamal Matthews from Ms. Parker's 5th grade class. For a moment, Jamal couldn't believe what he'd heard. Had Mrs. Green really said his name? Ms. Parker was beaming at him. Some students were clapping. It was real. He had won. Congratulations. Jamal, Ms. Parker said, please go to the office to collect your prize. As Jamal walked to the door, he caught sight of Tyler's face. He looked shocked and angry. In the office, Mrs. Green handed Jamal an envelope. Your essay was remarkable. Jamal, your passion for Formula One and Lewis Hamilton really shone through. Thank you, Jamal whispered, staring at the envelope containing 2 tickets to the British Grand Prix. When school ended, Jamal rushed out, eager to tell his mom the good news. But just outside the building, Tyler and his friends were waiting. Hey, Weird Wheels, Tyler called. We need to talk about those tickets. Tyler stepped closer, his friends forming a circle around Jamal. Here's the deal, Tyler said, his voice low. My dad really wants to go to that race. You're going to give me those tickets, or things are going to get much worse for you at school. Jamal clutched the envelope tighter. I won those tickets fair and square, he said, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. Tyler's face darkened. You think things are bad now? Just wait. You have until Monday to decide. He pushed past Jamal, bumping his shoulder hard. Choose wisely, Weird Wheels. As they walked away, Jamal stood frozen. The joy of winning was now mixed with fear. But one thought kept him standing tall. Lewis would never give in to bullies, and neither would he. Mom! Mom! Jamal burst through the door of their apartment, waving the envelope in the air. I won! I really won! Mom looked up from the bills she was sorting at the kitchen table. Her tired face broke into a smile. The essay contest? You won the tickets? Yes, Jamal handed her the envelope. 2 tickets to the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. We can go together. Mom opened the envelope and examined the tickets. These are amazing seats, Jamal. Near turn 9. She hugged him tight. I'm so proud of you. I knew your essay would be special. Mrs. Green said it was the best one, Jamal said, unable to stop smiling. Then he remembered Tyler's threat, and his smile faded. Mom, Tyler wants me to give him the tickets. Mom's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? He said, if I don't give them to him by Monday, things will get worse at school. Jamal looked down at his sneakers. His dad really wants to go to the race. Mom put her hands on Jamal's shoulders. Listen to me. You won those tickets fair and square. They belong to you. We are not giving them to Tyler or his father. But what if? No buts, Mom said firmly. I'll call the school on Monday and talk to Ms. Parker about this. It's time someone put a stop to Tyler's bullying. Jamal felt a wave of relief. Mom always knew what to do. The next 2 weeks flew by. Ms. Parker had a serious talk with Tyler after Mom called, and while he still glared at Jamal across the classroom, he kept his distance. Finally, race day arrived. Jamal woke up before his alarm. Too excited to sleep, he put on his prized Lewis Hamilton cap, a birthday gift from 2 years ago, and his Mercedes team shirt that Mom had saved up to buy him. You look like a proper F1 fan, Mom said, as they left for the bus that would take them to Silverstone. The circuit was even more amazing than Jamal remembered. Thousands of fans streamed toward the entrance gates, many wearing Lewis Hamilton gear just like him. The air buzzed with excitement and the distant sound of engines warming up. Our seats are in the Cops grandstand, Mom said, consulting the map. That's a great corner, one of the fastest on the track. They found their seats with a perfect view of turn 9, where cars would flash past at incredible speeds. Jamal bounced on his toes, unable to contain his excitement. "Look!" he pointed as the practice session began. "That's Lewis's car, number 44. The sleek black Mercedes roared past, and Jamal cheered so loudly his throat hurt. For the next hour, he tracked every lap time, telling Mom exactly how Lewis was performing compared to the other drivers. "He's got pole position," Jamal exclaimed when qualifying ended. "That means he'll start the race at the front tomorrow." "I know what pole position means," Mom laughed. "I've watched enough races with you to learn the lingo." During the break, before the support races, they decided to explore the circuit. Food stands selling everything from burgers to fancy sandwiches lined the paths between grandstands. Merchandise tents were packed with fans buying team gear. "Can we go to the Mercedes area?" Jamal asked. "Please?" They made their way to the Mercedes team booth, where a crowd had gathered. A sign announced, "Fan messages for our drivers. Share your support." "Look, Mom," Jamal pointed excitedly. "Fans can write messages for Lewis and his teammate." Inside the booth, people were writing notes on special cards and dropping them into a box. A team member explained that some messages would be shared with the drivers before the race. Jamal's heart raced. This was another chance to reach Lewis. He took a card and thought carefully about what to write. He couldn't fit his whole story, but he could write something short. "Dear Lewis, I'm Jamal from Silverstone Primary. I won tickets to today's race by writing about you as my hero. Some kids at school bully me because I love racing, but watching you win helps me be brave. Thank you for showing me it's okay to be different. Your biggest fan, Jamal." He carefully placed his card in the box. Mom took a photo of him doing it, both of them smiling wide. "That's going on the fridge when we get home," she said. The day was turning out to be perfect. They bought hot dogs and drinks, then headed back to their seats for the support races. The junior formulas were exciting, but Jamal couldn't wait for tomorrow's main event when Lewis would race. As they approached their grandstand, Jamal stopped suddenly. Two familiar figures were sitting in their seats, Tyler and his father. "Mom," Jamal whispered, pointing. "That's Tyler." Mom frowned. "Are you sure?" "Yes, and that's his dad with him." They walked closer. Tyler saw them coming and nudged his father, who looked up with a defensive expression. "Excuse me," Mom said politely. "I think you're in our seats." Tyler's father barely glanced at their tickets. "We bought these seats fair and square from a guy outside." "That's not possible," Mom replied, her voice firm. "These tickets were a prize my son won in a school contest. They were never for sale." "Look, lady," Tyler's dad said, "I paid good money for these seats. We're not moving." By now, other spectators were watching the argument. Jamal felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. A track steward approached. "Is there a problem here?" Mom explained the situation, showing their tickets. Tyler's father produced different tickets, but with the same seat numbers. "Someone sold you counterfeit tickets, sir," the steward said to Tyler's father. "These people have the legitimate tickets for these seats." Tyler's father's face turned red. "That's ridiculous. I want to speak to your supervisor." The argument continued, with more officials getting involved. Meanwhile, the first support race was starting. Jamal watched helplessly as cars roared around the track while he stood in the aisle. Eventually, the circuit management found Tyler and his father alternative seats in another grandstand, but resolving the situation had taken almost 2 hours. "I'm sorry, honey," Mom said as they finally sat down. "We missed most of the racing." Jamal nodded, trying not to show his disappointment. They were just in time to see the final support race, and, tomorrow, they'd see the main event. But something about the day felt tarnished now. As the last car crossed the finish line, Jamal spotted Lewis Hamilton in the distance, walking with his team. Too far to see clearly, but unmistakable in his team uniform. "There he is, Mom," Jamal whispered. Even from far away, Lewis looked focused, confident, like someone who never let bullies win. Watching him, Jamal made a silent promise not to let Tyler ruin his perfect weekend. Tomorrow would be better. Tomorrow, he would see Lewis Hamilton win. The next day was everything Jamal had dreamed of. Almost. They arrived early, making sure no one could take their seats again. The atmosphere was electric as fans filled the grandstands. When Lewis Hamilton appeared during the driver's parade, the crowd roared, and Jamal cheered until his voice grew hoarse. The race itself was nail-biting. Lewis had a bad start, dropping to third place on the first lap. Jamal gripped the edge of his seat, barely breathing as he watched his hero battle back, overtaking first one car, then another. When Lewis finally reclaimed the lead with a brilliant move at Stowe Corner, Jamal jumped up, punching the air with both fists. "He did it, Mom! Did you see that overtake?" Mom nodded, smiling at his excitement. She might not understand all the racing terms, but she understood what this meant to her son. In the end, Lewis crossed the finish line first, waving the British flag during his victory lap. Jamal felt like his heart might burst with happiness. For those magical moments, watching Lewis stand on the top step of the podium, the national anthem playing, nothing else mattered. Not Tyler, not the bullies, not even the rain-soaked letter. But Monday morning brought Jamal crashing back to reality. "Hey, everyone! Guess what?" Tyler announced as Jamal walked into class. "Weird Wheels was crying at the race when my dad took his seats." Jamal froze in the doorway. "That's not true. I didn't cry." But Tyler was already spinning his story to a growing circle of classmates. His mom begged the track people to find him different seats because he was sobbing so much. Such a baby. "That's not what happened," Jamal said, but his voice was drowned out by laughter. Throughout the day, Tyler's story spread and grew. By lunchtime, some kids were making fake crying sounds whenever Jamal walked by. Even kids who normally didn't bother him joined in the teasing. "Just ignore them," Ms. Parker advised when she noticed Jamal sitting alone. "They'll find something else to talk about soon." But they didn't. The story of Jamal crying at Silverstone became the favorite joke of the 5th grade. Each day, that week, someone found a new way to bring it up. When recess came, Jamal didn't run his usual laps around the playground. Instead, he sat on a bench near the fence, watching other kids play. His Lewis Hamilton cap stayed in his backpack now. What was the point? On Friday afternoon, Ms. Parker asked Jamal to stay after class. "I've noticed you're not running your racing laps anymore," she said gently. Jamal shrugged, staring at his shoes. "I saw this article and thought of you." She handed him a printed page. Lewis Hamilton is visiting several schools to talk about bullying. He started a program called Accelerate Change to help kids who feel different or left out. Jamal skimmed the article. There was a picture of Lewis sitting in a classroom, surrounded by kids about Jamal's age. Lewis also started something called the Hamilton Commission, Ms. Parker continued. It's an organization that helps kids from different backgrounds get into motorsport. You could write to them. They might be able to connect your letter directly to Lewis. She wrote down a website address. "Think about it, okay?" Jamal nodded, folding the paper into his pocket. but he wasn't sure he'd use it. What was the point of writing another letter that would probably never reach Lewis? Even if it did, why would someone as important as Lewis Hamilton care about one kid's problems? That evening, Jamal sat on his bed, staring at his Lewis posters without really seeing them. Mom had noticed his mood getting worse, but didn't know how to help. Out of habit, he turned on his tablet to watch highlights from the British Grand Prix. The video showed Lewis's post-race interview. "This win is special," Lewis was saying. "Racing at home, feeling the energy from the fans. It means everything. When things get tough out there, knowing you have people supporting you makes all the difference." Jamal paused the video, Lewis's words echoing in his mind. Support. That's what Lewis had from the fans. That's what Jamal wanted too. Just one person who understood. Maybe it was worth trying one more time. Without telling Mom or anyone else, Jamal opened his notebook and began to write a new letter. 3 weeks passed. The school year was coming to an end, and summer vacation was just days away. Jamal had mailed his letter to the Hamilton Commission address Ms. Parker had given him. He'd used his own money, coins saved from his birthday and Christmas, to buy the stamp. Unlike his first letter, this one was shorter but more honest. He'd written about what happened at Silverstone with Tyler, about the increased bullying afterward, and about how he was starting to lose his love for racing. He asked if Lewis had ever felt like giving up on his dreams because of other people. Jamal didn't tell anyone about the letter. Not Mom, not Ms. Parker. That way, when nothing happened, because nothing would happen, no one would know he'd gotten his hopes up again. The bullying had settled into a dull, constant ache. Tyler had moved on to other targets, though he still called Jamal Weird Wheels whenever they passed in the hallway. Jamal had stopped running his laps at recess. His Lewis Hamilton posters still hung on his bedroom walls, but he didn't look at them the same way anymore. On Wednesday evening, Mom's phone rang during dinner. She frowned at the unknown number but answered anyway. "Hello? Yes, this is Jamal's mother." Her eyes widened as she listened. "I'm sorry. Who did you say you're with?" She glanced at Jamal, her expression unreadable. "Yes, he's here with me. May I ask what this is regarding?" Jamal watched his mom's face shift from confusion to shock. "I see. Yes, that would be... Yes, we could do that. Tomorrow? Let me check." She covered the phone with her hand. "Jamal, are you free tomorrow after school?" "It's important." Jamal nodded, confused. Who would be calling about him? "Yes, tomorrow works for us," Mom said into the phone. "Thank you. We'll see you then." She hung up and stared at Jamal. That was someone from Mercedes Formula One, the racing team. Jamal's fork clattered onto his plate. "What?" "A woman named Claire. She said they received your letter to the Hamilton Commission. She said they've been trying to contact the school for your information, and they finally reached Ms. Parker today." Mom took a deep breath. "They want us to visit the Mercedes headquarters in Brackley tomorrow. They didn't explain why, just that it's important." Jamal couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Mercedes F1 wants to see me?" That's what she said. Mom looked as stunned as he felt. "What exactly did you write in that letter, Jamal?" "Just stuff about racing and school." He didn't want to tell her everything. Not yet. Mom studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Well, I'll call work and take tomorrow afternoon off. This seems important." That night, Jamal couldn't sleep. His mind raced with possibilities. Maybe they were going to give him team merchandise. Or maybe his heart sped up at the thought. Maybe they'd arranged for Lewis to call him on the phone. Whatever it was, someone had actually read his letter. Someone cared. The next day at school lasted forever. Jamal couldn't focus on any lessons. When the final bell rang, he raced outside to find Mom waiting by the gate, looking nervous but excited. "Ready?" she asked. The bus to Brackley leaves in 15 minutes. The journey took nearly an hour. As they approached the Mercedes headquarters, Jamal's stomach twisted with nerves. The building was huge and modern, with silver and teal accents, the Mercedes team colors. At reception, a friendly woman greeted them. "You must be Jamal and Mrs. Matthews. Welcome to Mercedes AMG Petronas Formula One team. Claire will be with you shortly." They sat in the gleaming lobby, surrounded by trophy cases displaying shining silver cups and medals. On the walls hung large photos of Lewis Hamilton and his teammate celebrating victories. "Jamal?" A woman with a tablet approached them. "I'm Claire. Thank you for coming. Please, follow me." She led them through security doors and down a hallway lined with more racing photos. Jamal tried to take everything in, from the spotless floors to the busy offices they passed. Finally, they reached a small meeting room with a table and chairs. "Please, make yourselves comfortable," Claire said. "Mr. Wolf will be with you shortly." "Mr. Wolf?" Mom repeated. "Toto Wolff, the team principal?" Claire smiled. "Yes, he wanted to meet you personally." After she left, Mom turned to Jamal with wide eyes. "Toto Wolff? He runs the entire Mercedes team." "Jamal, what did you write in that letter?" Before Jamal could answer, the door opened. A tall man with dark hair and bright eyes walked in. He wore a black Mercedes team shirt with sponsors' logos across it. Jamal recognized him immediately from TV. Toto Wolff, the boss of Lewis Hamilton's team. "Jamal and Mrs. Matthews, thank you for coming," he said with a slight accent, shaking their hands. "I apologize for the short notice." "It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Wolff," Mom said, clearly starstruck. "Please, call me Toto." He sat across from them. "Jamal, your letter to the Hamilton Commission was very moving." Lewis read it. While he was between testing sessions in Spain, Jamal's heart skipped. "Lewis Hamilton read my letter?" Toto nodded. He wanted to respond personally, but he's still in Spain preparing for the next race. "He asked me to give you something." Toto placed a black box on the table and slid it toward Jamal. "Lewis wanted you to have this. You can open it now." With trembling hands, Jamal lifted the lid. Inside was a racing helmet. Not a replica or a model, but a real racing helmet with Lewis's distinctive design. And beneath it was an envelope with "For Jamal" written on it in handwriting. "That's from Lewis himself," Toto said. "His personal letter to you." Jamal's hands trembled as he opened the envelope. He pulled out several pages of handwritten text. The first page had the Mercedes team logo at the top. "Go ahead," Mom encouraged, her eyes wide with amazement. Jamal took a deep breath and began to read. "Dear Jamal, I wanted to write to you personally after reading your letter. Your words touched me deeply because they reminded me so much of my own childhood. I know exactly what it feels like to be different, to be bullied, and to wonder if your dreams are worth all the pain. When I was your age, I was often the only black kid at karting races. Some of the other kids and their parents would say horrible things. They'd make fun of my secondhand equipment. They'd accidentally bump me off the track. Some days, I'd sit in the car on the way home and cry, telling my dad I wanted to quit racing forever. My father worked multiple jobs to support my racing. He'd tell me, "Lewis, you can't let them win. You have to rise above it. Let your racing do the talking." Those words weren't always easy to hear, but they kept me going when things got tough. I see that same spirit in you, Jamal. The fact that you've held on to your love for racing despite everything shows incredible strength. That's the same strength you need to be a champion in life, no matter what path you choose. The helmet I'm sending you has a special story. It's the one I wore during the 2008 Brazilian Grand Prix, the race where I won my first world championship. I was just 23 years old. It came down to the very last corner of the very last lap of the season. I needed to pass one more car to win the championship, and somehow I did it. I passed Timo Glock's Toyota and crossed the finish line in 5th place, earning just enough points to become world champion by a single point. That race taught me that you never, ever give up. Not until you've crossed the finish line. Even when things seem impossible, you keep pushing. I've kept this helmet all these years as a reminder of that day. Now, I want you to have it. When things get tough, when bullies like Tyler try to make you feel small, I want you to look at this helmet and remember, champions don't quit, and they don't let others define who they are or what they can achieve. I understand how you feel about losing your love for racing. The thing is, Jamal, sometimes we have to protect the things we love. It's okay to keep your passions private for a while if that's what helps you. But don't ever let go of them completely. Those dreams are what make you who you are. I've also arranged something I hope will make your summer special. I've spoken with Toto about inviting you to be my personal guest at next year's British Grand Prix. Not just as a spectator, but to join me in the garage, see the car up close, and experience race day from the inside. Toto has all the details. Keep your head up, Jamal. Remember that for every bully like Tyler, there are hundreds of people who would be inspired by your passion and determination, just as I am. Your friend, Lewis Hamilton P.S. The inside of the helmet has a message just for you. No one else needs to see it, unless you want to share it. Jamal's vision blurred with tears as he finished reading. He carefully set the letter down and picked up the helmet. It was surprisingly heavy, with Lewis's distinctive yellow design and his number 44. Jamal tilted it to look inside and saw handwriting. To Jamal, rise above. The real finish line is the one you set. L.H. Can I? Mom asked, reaching for the letter. Jamal nodded, and she began to read, her hand covering her mouth as she took in Lewis's words. Toto watched them with a gentle smile. Lewis was quite moved by your story, Jamal. When he read what happened at Silverstone with Tyler and his father, he immediately called me from Spain and asked me to arrange this. Jamal carefully held the helmet in his lap, still unable to believe it was real. This was Lewis Hamilton's actual race helmet, worn during his first championship win, one of the most dramatic moments in Formula One history. As Lewis mentioned in his letter, Toto continued, he would like to invite you to be his special guest at next year's British Grand Prix. We'll provide full access passes for you and your mother. You'll join Lewis in the garage, attend the team briefings, and watch the race from our hospitality suite. Mom looked up from the letter, wiping away tears. This is incredibly generous, Mr. Wolf. I mean, Toto. We don't know how to thank you and Lewis enough. Please, no thanks are necessary. Lewis feels strongly about helping young people facing bullying. Your son's letter really resonated with him. Toto glanced at his watch. Now, we've arranged for a tour of our factory while you're here. Would you like to see where we build Lewis's car? Jamal's eyes widened. We can see the real factory. Of course. Toto stood. Follow me. For the next hour, Jamal and Mom were led through areas of the Mercedes factory rarely seen by the public. They saw the engineering department where computers designed every tiny part of the F1 cars. They visited the carbon fiber section where workers carefully crafted the lightweight but incredibly strong car bodies. Most exciting of all was the garage area where mechanics worked on real F1 cars. A silver and black Mercedes race car sat gleaming under bright lights, its bodywork removed to expose the complex engine inside. "This is last year's car," the tour guide explained. "This season's car is in Spain with Lewis, but this one is nearly identical." Jamal stood in awe, taking in every detail of the machine. The steering wheel alone had more buttons and dials than a spaceship's control panel. "Would you like to sit in it?" the guide asked. Before Jamal could answer, Mom spoke up. "I should take a photo of this. It's a once-in-a-lifetime moment." As Jamal carefully climbed into the tight cockpit, Mom snapped pictures on her phone. The seat was molded to fit Lewis's body, but Jamal didn't care that it was too big for him. He was sitting in Lewis Hamilton's actual race car. When the tour ended, they returned to the meeting room where Claire was waiting with a bag of Mercedes team merchandise, hats, shirts, and a model car, all signed by Lewis. "One more thing," Toto said, rejoining them. "Lewis asked us to arrange transportation home for you. Our team car will take you back." Outside, a sleek black Mercedes with tinted windows waited for them. A driver in a team uniform held the door open. As they settled into the luxurious leather seats, Jamal carefully cradled the helmet box in his lap. Mom looked at him with tears still shining in her eyes. "What are you thinking, honey?" she asked softly. Jamal ran his finger over Lewis's signature on the helmet visor. "I don't know how to feel. It's like Lewis really understands me. Like he knows exactly what I've been going through." "That's because he's been there himself," Mom said. "That's what makes this so special." Jamal nodded, thinking about the letter. Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion. One of the greatest drivers in history, had once felt just like him. Had faced bullies, had wanted to quit, but he hadn't given up. As the Mercedes pulled away from the factory, Jamal made a decision. Tomorrow, he would bring the helmet to school for the last day of classes. It was time to show everyone who he really was. The next morning, Jamal packed his backpack carefully. Instead of his usual school supplies, he gently placed Lewis Hamilton's helmet inside a special racing bag that had been included with the Mercedes merchandise. Mom watched from the doorway, concern etched on her face. "Are you sure about this, honey? That helmet is priceless. What if something happens to it?" Jamal zipped the bag closed with determination. "I need to do this, Mom. Lewis gave me this helmet to help me be brave. I can't keep it hidden away." Mom nodded slowly. "Okay, just be careful with it." "I will." Jamal slung the bag over his shoulder, surprised by its weight. At school, Ms. Parker's class was buzzing with excitement for the last day. Kids chattered about summer plans while Ms. Parker handed out end-of-year certificates. When Jamal walked in carrying the unfamiliar racing bag, a few heads turned. Tyler noticed immediately. "What's in the bag? Weird wheels? More racing toys?" He snickered, but Jamal just walked to his desk without responding. Throughout the morning, Jamal waited patiently. Ms. Parker had told them they would each have a chance to share something special during the end-of-year presentations after lunch. That would be his moment. When the time finally came, Ms. Parker called students up one by one. Some showed vacation photos, others talked about summer camps they would attend. Tyler bragged about the new gaming system his father had promised him. "Next up is Jamal," Ms. Parker announced. "Jamal, would you like to share something with the class?" Jamal's heart pounded as he walked to the front, carrying his racing bag. The classroom fell silent as everyone watched him curiously. Yesterday, Jamal began, his voice shaking slightly. Something amazing happened. I got to visit the Mercedes Formula One headquarters. A few kids exchanged confused glances. Tyler rolled his eyes dramatically. I was invited there because... Jamal took a deep breath. Because Lewis Hamilton read a letter I wrote to him. Now he had everyone's attention. Even Tyler looked disbelieving rather than dismissive. Slowly, Jamal unzipped the racing bag and pulled out the gleaming helmet. A collective gasp went through the classroom. This is Lewis Hamilton's actual racing helmet. He wore it when he won his first world championship in 2008. Jamal held it up for everyone to see the distinctive yellow design and the number 44. He sent it to me with a letter. Ms. Parker's mouth fell open in shock. Jamal, is that really? Jamal nodded. Lewis wrote to me about being bullied when he was a kid. He said, champions don't quit, and they don't let others define who they are. He looked directly at Tyler for the first time in months. Lewis said I should share this with you. Jamal opened the letter and read selected parts aloud. The parts about Lewis being bullied, about needing to rise above it, about letting his racing do the talking. He kept some portions private, like Lewis's invitation to the next British Grand Prix. When he finished reading, the room was completely silent. Ms. Parker wiped away a tear. Lewis also wrote something special inside the helmet, Jamal added, turning it so they could see the handwritten message. Can I see it? Asked Mark, one of Tyler's friends, his voice filled with awe. Before Jamal could answer, Miss Parker cleared her throat. This is obviously very special, Jamal. Thank you for sharing it with us. But perhaps we should continue with our presentations, and then everyone can have a closer look afterwards? Jamal nodded and returned to his seat, feeling oddly calm. The weight of secrecy had lifted from his shoulders. For the first time in months, he wasn't trying to hide his love for racing. After the last presentation, Miss Parker had a surprise of her own. Before we end our day, I'd like to show you something special. She turned on the classroom screen and opened an email. Jamal's story inspired me to reach out to someone, and I received this just an hour ago. She played a video, and suddenly, Lewis Hamilton's face filled the screen. Jamal's jaw dropped. Hello to Ms. Parker's 5th grade class at Silverstone Primary, Lewis said, smiling into the camera. I'm here in Spain preparing for the next race, but I wanted to take a moment to talk to you all. The entire class sat perfectly still, captivated. I heard that my friend Jamal would be sharing my helmet with you today, Lewis continued. That helmet means a lot to me, as I'm sure he explained. But I wanted to tell you something important. Champions aren't just made on racetracks. They're made in classrooms, on playgrounds, and anywhere people face challenges. Lewis's expression grew more serious. Being a champion isn't just about winning trophies. It's about how you treat others, how you handle difficulties, and how you support each other. Jamal showed championship qualities by sharing his story with me, and I hope you'll all find ways to be champions in your own lives. Then Lewis said something that made Jamal's heart soar. Jamal, thank you for being brave. Enough to reach out. Your letter reminded me why I keep racing. I look forward to seeing you at Silverstone next year, mate. The video ended, and every eye in the room turned to Jamal. There was a moment of stunned silence before the class erupted in excited chatter. As the final bell rang and students began packing up, Tyler approached Jamal's desk. For once, he wasn't smirking. He looked almost respectful. Can I see the helmet? He asked quietly. Jamal hesitated, thinking of all the mean things Tyler had said and done. The old Jamal would have said no, would have wanted Tyler to feel as hurt as he had, but then he remembered what Lewis had written about rising above, about being the bigger person. "Sure," Jamal said, carefully handing over the helmet. Tyler held it reverently, turning it over in his hands. "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen," he admitted. "Lewis Hamilton actually sent this to you?" "Yeah. He read my letter about what happened at school and at Silverstone." Tyler's face flushed. "About that, my dad was pretty mad when we got kicked out of those seats." More students gathered around, eager to see the helmet and hear about Lewis. For the first time, they listened to Jamal explain Formula One racing with genuine interest. Even Mark asked questions about how the cars worked and how fast they could go. As Jamal packed up his things, something had shifted. The world hadn't completely changed. Tyler wasn't suddenly his best friend, but something was different. Jamal stood a little taller as he walked out of school that day, Lewis Hamilton's helmet safely in his bag, and a new kind of confidence in his steps. A new race was beginning, and this time, Jamal wasn't running alone. 6 months had passed since that last day of school. The British summer had faded into autumn, and autumn had given way to winter. Now, Jamal stood in a place he'd only dreamed about, the Mercedes garage at Silverstone Circuit. The air smelled of rubber, fuel, and excitement. Team members in matching uniforms rushed around, checking screens full of data and making last-minute adjustments to the gleaming black race car, and kneeling right in front of Jamal, speaking to him at eye level, was Lewis Hamilton. "So, what do you think of the new car?" Lewis asked, his smile warm and genuine. "It's amazing," Jamal breathed, still unable to believe this was really happening. "The aerodynamics look completely different from last season." Lewis raised his eyebrows, impressed. "You've been studying," he said. "You're right. We've changed the side pod design to improve airflow." For the past hour, Lewis had been giving Jamal a personal tour of the garage, explaining every part of the car and introducing him to the engineers. Some of the team members already knew Jamal by name. Lewis had been sharing updates from their months of correspondence. After the last day of school, Lewis had sent Jamal his personal email address. Over the summer and into the new school year, they'd exchanged messages regularly. Lewis asked about Jamal's life, his racing dreams, and the bullying situation. Jamal had been honest in his replies, sharing both his struggles and his victories. The biggest victory had come in September, when Mom had enrolled Jamal in a local karting club. Using some of her savings and a special scholarship from the Hamilton Commission, Jamal had started racing for real. To everyone's surprise, especially his own, Jamal had shown real talent. His hours of studying Formula One racing lines and techniques had given him an edge. 3 months into karting, he'd won his first junior race. Even more surprising was his newest teammate. When word spread about Jamal joining the karting club, Tyler had convinced his father to sign him up too. At first, Jamal had been wary, expecting more bullying. But something had changed in Tyler. Perhaps it was seeing Jamal earn Lewis Hamilton's respect, or perhaps it was simply growing up a little. Whatever the reason, Tyler had approached Jamal at their first practice session with an awkward but sincere offer of friendship. They weren't best friends, but they were teammates now, pushing each other to race harder, to be better. Camera flashes interrupted Jamal's thoughts as photographers captured Lewis showing him the steering wheel. These images would soon appear on F1 social media. Lewis Hamilton mentoring a young fan. What the cameras didn't know was how deep their connection had grown. Lewis had become more than just a hero to Jamal. He was a mentor and friend. "Come on," Lewis said, standing up. "We've got one more surprise before the race starts." He led Jamal through the bustling paddock to where the drivers' parade was being organized. A large flatbed truck was waiting, decorated with flags of all the competing nations. "You're riding with me today," Lewis said. Jamal looked up in shock. "On the drivers' parade? But that's just for the racers." Lewis winked. "I cleared it with the officials. Special exception for a special guest." Minutes later, Jamal could hardly believe where he was, standing next to Lewis Hamilton on the parade truck as it slowly circled Silverstone, waving to thousands of cheering fans. The other F1 drivers smiled and nodded at Jamal, clearly in on Lewis's plan. As they rounded a corner, Lewis pointed to a section of the crowd. "Look there, your mom and your karting team." Jamal spotted Mom standing with his karting coach and teammates, including Tyler. They were all wearing special Mercedes caps that Lewis had sent them, waving frantically. "I can't thank you enough for everything," Jamal said, his voice almost lost in the crowd's roar. Lewis leaned down so Jamal could hear him. "You know what makes this story special? That helmet I gave you wasn't just from my first championship." He paused, making sure no one else could hear. "It's the same helmet I was wearing when I was 10 years old, getting bullied at a race in Hoddesdon. Someone there told me I'd never make it in racing. That someone was Tyler's father." Jamal looked up in shock as everything suddenly connected. Why Tyler's dad had seemed so uncomfortable at Silverstone when he saw Jamal. Why he had taken their seats. And why Tyler had targeted Jamal specifically from the first day of school. "Tyler's dad was at your karting race? He was the one who bullied you?" Lewis nodded. "He was a karting dad back then, just like he is now. When I won my first championship, I made sure he remembered me. He recognized me when we met years later. He works in corporate hospitality now. That's how he got those fake tickets to your seats. Does Tyler know?" "I don't think so," Lewis said. "Some races take years to win, Jamal. You just won one without even knowing you were racing." As the truck rounded the final corner, approaching the starting grid where Lewis would soon begin the actual race, he squeezed Jamal's shoulder. "Ready for your victory lap?" Lewis asked. With the crowd cheering all around them, Jamal nodded, finally understanding that sometimes the greatest victories happen far from any finish line. This victory belonged to both of them, the boy who had been brave enough to write a letter, and the champion who had never forgotten what it felt like to be that boy. Together, they waved to the crowd, two racers who had learned the same powerful truth. The most important race isn't against other drivers, it's against the voice inside that tells you to give up. And that was a race they were both winning, one lap at a time. Thanks for joining me till the end of this incredible journey of Jamal and Lewis Hamilton. Let me know in the comments from where you are tuning in. Drop your city and country name in the comments. Also, make sure to subscribe to this channel if you love Lewis Hamilton and want more inspiring content like this. These moments of connection between champions and young fans show the true impact sports heroes can have beyond the track. Hit that like button if you were moved by Jamal's experience and Lewis's amazing response. See you in the next one.